Welcome, everybody. It's Joe Joseph here. You're listening to the Freedom Link this 20th of March, 2014. And tonight, folks, I'm going to be joined by a very, very special guest. Michael Rood of a Rood Awakening International is going to be joining me. We're going to go over a whole host of topics tonight. But some, I hope, that maybe open your eyes a little bit to just how accurate historical sources are. And I'm talking about the Bible. Bible prophecy and everything is coming to fruition. It's being fulfilled before our eyes these days. And we experience it all the time. So it's a great opportunity to be able to have Michael come on the broadcast and also talk about some of the things that he has coming up. Also, folks, at 10 p.m. Eastern, Popeye is going to be airing a very special interview. He's giving me details on that here shortly. But make sure you stay tuned, 10 p.m. Eastern. He's got a very, very good interview he pre-recorded, and you don't want to miss that. So just a fantastic night of radio ahead. And while I'm waiting for Michael Rood, I just want to talk a little bit about this trip that President Obama, the First Lady, Michelle Obama, and her daughters embarked on and landed today in China, in Beijing. Now, mind you, we are in a serious bind here in this country, fiscally, running deficits, and a debt, really, that we can't repay. And we have the First Lady flying her family over to China. President's here. They're over there, having a good old time on your dime. I don't know about you, but I'm outraged by just how inconsiderate they are, and how they just squander the taxpayers' money as if it's not theirs, as if they don't have a duty to be good vanguards of the taxpayer money. Because you live in a mansion? Because you live at the White House? You think you're entitled to all this? I look back at history, and especially some of the founding fathers. Now, of course, you know, some of the founding fathers were well-to-do. Others were not. John Monroe died a pauper in heavy debt. And in those days, debt just didn't disappear when mom or dad died. That debt transferred to your children. Now, back in those days, if a president threw a function, had a state dinner, the president paid for it out of his own pocket. That was not taxpayer funded. John Monroe amassed $75,000 in debt just doing state functions. As a matter of fact, it was after he died that Congress forgave a good portion of his debt because there's no way his kids could pay it back. And now you have a First Lady that totally and completely disregards the fact that this is the taxpayer money. I mean, look at the wardrobes, you know, and just the lavish lifestyle and the vacations. It almost like it's a snub, you know? And we, the commoners, we pay for it. You know, I always ask myself this, how many hungry families can be fed instead of her doing this and all this extravagance? I wonder how much we could get by donating her wardrobe. You know, maybe having an auction. It's troubling to me, that's all. And it really it shows the tone in this country. It really does. It displays not only a blatant disregard for what's right and what's just, but also it speaks to how disconnected the American people are. You know, and how their compass is just so out of whack. It's really sad state of affairs. But I'm joined now by Michael Rood of a Rood Awakening International. Fantastic guest. Has a great TV show, Shabbat Night Live, every Friday night. And he does a great piece on Shabbat Night Live called From Here to Eternity. And I'm going to talk a lot about that with Michael tonight, as well as talk about some of the latest things he's been up to. So, Michael, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's good to be with you.
Boy, you sound great. I hear that you're a grandpa again.
That's right. Just got back from Germany. My youngest daughter is she lives there in Heidelberg, getting her master's degree at the university there, and married 3 years ago. And now I have my second grandson. So just got off the plane a couple days ago, and good to be back in the U.S. and good to be a grandfather again here.
That sounds awesome. Congratulations, first of all. And wow, you don't get to sit around much, do you?
yeah. That's those days are long gone by. But I was over there. We had the scheduled for, of course, as babies are usually scheduled 9 months in advance, and so when we knew the time, then it was time to get over and do a couple of seminars. One in just outside of Amsterdam, the other one in Rotterdam. And my European office is just outside of Amsterdam, and that's where our family is from. And so this is a good chance to get back to the homeland, and this is a good stopover on the over to the land of Israel as well.
Oh, fantastic! So what you got coming down the pipe? I know, of course, you've got the Passover event that you've got coming up 18 to 20 April. I know my wife and I will be down there joining you, and we're looking forward to that. Let me tell you.
Well, that really is one of the great exciting events of the entire year. We have about 500 people. That's about the room that we have for this, and so we pack it out each year, and it is really an extravaganza. We have a pastor from this local area who just signed up, took an entire table for himself, and we have pastors that come in from around the country to come to this because once you experience one of the Passovers that I do, we call it an extravaganza, and really the meal is really, I don't think there's anyone there that's counting at all, but the meal must go on for like 4 hours with the children, everyone there, because of the story that we get to tell. And every year, especially the pastors, the ones that have studied this stuff in the Gospels, the tears just run down their face. It is just such an impactful thing because the word, the Gospels come alive like you never would imagine it. And, part of the problem is, and you know this, Joe, that, we've been raised in the Western Gentile Christian world that, has basically adopted renamed pagan festivals. We know nothing about the feast of the Lord, which are, as Shaul says, are all prophetic shadow pictures of good things to come. But if we know nothing about them, we don't even realize that when we're reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we're reading the detail of Yeshua fulfilling the spring feast of the Lord. And the book of the Revelation, that is the detail of the Messiah and how he will fulfill the fall feast of the Lord. The feast are they're the mechanism whereby the Almighty is told the end of time from the very beginning. And these prophetic shadow pictures are so precise that Yeshua fulfilled them to the very day, the very hour, the exact moment, in every detail in which they were rehearsed in the temple for 1,000 years. And so thanks to the Jews, these remembrances are what we did in the temple are remembered in the traditions. But it's important to understand that the traditions we have in modern day Judaism are not what we did in the temple. They were put in place to remind us of what we did. So we take everyone back to the second temple period during the time of Yeshua, and we play these things out before their eyes, and it's like 3D, HD. It is an incredible thing. So we really encourage anyone who really wants to understand the Bible, anyone that really wants to understand what Yeshua was doing and what he was teaching and what he accomplished, be at that Passover event for the whole weekend.
For those that don't know about you and your ministry, what is the difference between Judaism and the Hebraic Roots ministry?
Well, Judaism, modern-day Judaism, is proudly known and acknowledged by modern day Jews and Jewish scholars as ancient Pharisaism. It's one and the same. In fact, to be a rabbi today, you have to be ordained by a rabbi who was ordained by a rabbi that goes back before the first century. And we have the writings of the rabbis that go back 300 years before Yeshua was born. So there's really not a whole lot of question about what they were teaching during Yeshua's lifetime that he stood against, that he taught against, that he vehemently and repeatedly violated. And that is the very essence of the Torah, the instructions that we received from Mount Sinai through the Almighty shouting down His commandments, and then of course Moses delivering the rest of the commandments to us. Those very commandments are that which Yeshua said, "I did not come to do away with." And in fact, it was Moses who told us very pointedly that no one is ever allowed to add one single commandment or subtract one single commandment. Because, of course, when you do that, you no longer have the truth. You have the beginning of a man-made religion. But Pharisaism is based on adding thousands of commandments, removing hundreds of commandments, and this is exactly what Yeshua stood up against as the prophet that we must shema, we must hear and obey. And in fact, the Deuteronomy chapter 18, the details concerning the prophet who would come in the future, Yeshua quoted that, and the people quoted that more than any other part of the Bible. That one chapter, those 8 verses are repeatedly referenced in the gospel record. And so when we take a look at this, we are not taking people back to the Jewish roots of the faith, because Judaism is a man-made religion. We're taking people back to the faith that was once delivered to the saints, as Jude, the half-brother of Yeshua, said in the book of Jude. And it is going back to that faith once delivered to the saints, to where those Jewish believers in the first century lived with the power of the Almighty. They gave their lives to get the good news out to the Gentiles. And then, after a while, the Gentiles, especially Constantine, added all this pagan sun god worship directly out of Babylon. Those things the Almighty calls abominations were finally inculcated into the part and parcel of the modern day Christian church. And it's time that we admitted that we've inherited some lies. We've inherited the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and any number of things right straight from Babylon. And it's time to get cleaned up, because this is the revival of which Jeremiah prophesied in the last days, that the Gentiles would come into Israel from the ends of the earth, and they would cry out in repentance for the abominations they inherited. And when they cry out in repentance, the Almighty said He will reveal His hand, His might, and even the Gentiles will know that His name is Yahovah.
I find this so fascinating, and let me tell you why. Because my life's journey was very, very, it was kind of backwards. Now, I know that, and I am absolutely floored and amazed that a Baptist Marine can come to the conclusions that you did, along your life's journey, and that you overcame that foundation that you had. Me, on the other hand, being I kind of went down the political road first, seeking truth, and then that led me around to the spiritual. That and my wife, who is as spiritually like this spiritual mega antenna that just and it just got me. So I've had that, and then we found you on YouTube, and that really brought in to perspective what Yeshua was all about, what Jesus is all about, and what his life was really like. Because what you're taught in most organized religions is total and completely backwards to what actually happened. Like, for example, 3.5-year ministry, or the fact that, the law was nailed to the cross, and all that kind of stuff.
I hear that from some real.
Well, yeah. So
it's precious,
and it's I tell you, it really is a rude awakening when you discover the truth. Much like the tomfoolery that our non-representing representatives do, our politicians, the elites. It's the same. It's almost that same slap in the face, And I tell you, I grieved when I first found out the truth. I mean, I was happy. But at the same time, wow, look at how many people out there are really deceived.
That's right. And when you talk about grief, the part of the counseling that we do and the personal counseling that has to take place is the pastors they've been searching for the truth. They went to Bible seminary in order to understand the truth because that's what they wanted. And when they finally realize that they have been lied to their whole life, I mean, they sometimes can be absolutely furiously mad because they were taught how to promulgate the religion. They weren't taught the truth. And all they have to do is hear the truth, and bam, it's something that they recognize. Politics and religion are so closely aligned because they're dominated by liars.
Right.
And people that will take advantage of other people, while proclaiming righteous acts and attitude. And we find out that both of them are used to manipulate, intimidate, and control people. And that's why money buys power. And whether you've got power in the top of the religious establishment or political establishment, absolute power corrupts absolutely, but a little bit of power usually corrupts a little bit anyway, and starts the downward spiral in both of those areas.
You're absolutely right. My wife actually found you on YouTube, and she started watching the Jonah Code series. And the first thing that she told me when after she had watched it and asked me to watch it was, "This is going to change the way we live our lives." And she's absolutely right, because we were always kind of on the fence about the holiday thing, the Christmas. We knew that wasn't Yeshua's birthday, and we knew that it wasn't what it was meant to be. And even from an early age, I went to 6 years of parochial school, but I always knew somehow at a very young age that this wasn't right. And in sixth grade, I asked the question, who made the Pope the boss? Since when can he make the rules? And I had never read a page one of the Bible, because in Catholic school, they don't teach you the Bible. You go to catechism and you go to religion class and you say the rosary and your sins are forgiven every time you go to confession, that kind of thing. But I always knew there was some sort of tomfoolery to that too. And boy, when I started digging into that, unbelievable. But now I've changed to where this will be the first feast that we're celebrating is Passover.
Welcome to the party. I say that when man was created, the Almighty knew he was creating a party animal, and he said, "This is how we're going to party." 3 times a year, he specifies it. He says, "Save a tenth, save a tithe, come up and buy anything your heart desires: the ox, the fatted calf, the sheep, wine, strong drink, and have a celebration to me." And, I can't believe what people say, do we have to keep the feast? It's like, what kind of idiot are you? It's do we have to have a party in the honor of the creator of the universe? This is the greatest joy in life, to fellowship with other people that really get it. Okay. They're not agnostics. They're not sitting around wondering, why we're here and if there is a God. I mean, get that thing cleared up real quick. All right. You almost have to be brain dead to, take a look around at life and say, this just happened. We go out hiking and find a pile, one rock on top of the other, 3 of them in descending size, and we know this is a man-made thing. But you can look at the human eyeball and say this just happened after millions of years of aberrant transmutations in a purely mechanical universe. You've got to have a faith in lunacy in order to believe that. So, once you get some of these things taken care of and you decide that, I want to live my life according to the instructions the Creator shouted down from a flaming mountain in front of millions of people that have continued to keep this word and to keep this instruction and to guard it with their lives after being assaulted and spread all over the world, but yet they have held on to this, and it is real. It's not some Buddha. It's not some kind of Shintoism or some man-made hockey foddy. It's reality. It's history. And that's why I take people around the land of Israel in my television programs to show them the reality. This is not a fairy tale. We can go right down the very path that David's mighty men went down to Bethlehem and killed 300 people so they could get them a drink of water. We go down there and drink coffee today on the same street. It didn't change in 3,000 years.
I think that's a great point that you just made there, and I want to say this to everybody out there. If you're skeptical about this, that's good. I know. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's bad. I don't want to poo-poo it, but I'm going to say this. If you're truly seeking the truth, and a lot of you are, the people that tune into this broadcast, you are, because that's what I do. I look for the truth no matter where the truth takes me, and I have to accept it when I find it. Even if it's something that I may not want to know or I may not want to see, the truth is a truth. And you develop good discernment as you go on and as you gain life experience. And that's all I can say is give go to it's a Rood Awakening on YouTube, correct?
That's right. We have a Rood Awakening. That's ROOD, spelled as my last name. A roodawakening.tv. That's our website, and you can get to it all through there in much better order than it is on YouTube. But we've got literally hundreds and hundreds of videos, many of them from the land of Israel on our YouTube site, which is also a Rood Awakening. I'm like the easiest person to find. We have over 2 million minutes of views every month just on YouTube itself. We're in 167 countries around the world in English and Spanish, and so it's really very easy to find me, and all of my material is out there free of charge. We do encourage people to stand with us and to help us, but my job is to get the truth out there, because I, like you, was a skeptic. I was raised in religion, and yet, when in the second grade, I remember asking the pastor on Easter Sunday, I said, "Pastor, how do you get 3 days and 3 nights between Good Friday and Easter Sunday morning?"
Second grade?
Second grade. And finally, when I was 17, I wasn't taking non-answers anymore. It's like, if you people can't count to 3 and you can't answer these simple questions, then what good are you? I was in church 6 times a week, 7 times if you include church softball. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I spent my life in church. My father was a Sunday school superintendent. I was the captain of the quiz team, the church quiz team. We memorized entire books of the Bible, chapters at a time. And yet, when I really started to ask the questions, when Vietnam was looming, I was next to go, and it's like, man, I don't even, my life could be ended just like my friends coming home in body bags, and yet I don't understand what this thing is all about. And so, my skepticism led me to years of digging and research into the scriptures. It took me back into the Hebrew, back into the Greek, and after 40 years of work, finally, I was able to publish the chronological Gospels, the life and 70-week ministry of the Messiah. Fantastic. It's a lifetime of work.
Fantastic tool. And what it does, folks, just so you know, is it brings those 5 books to life. I mean, literally, it's like I would equate it to like a reality TV show that's kind of unfolding before.
Except this is real.
Except it's real, right? It's real.
Yeah.
But it is. It's just that. It's almost, not only is it spiritually nourishing, but it also you can't put it down. That's the thing, is when it's in chronological order, and you can place Yeshua down to the location and the day that he was there. And it.
That's right. That's right. I mean, so many things we're able to nail exactly to the day because, of course, the Julian calendar, which is currently the calendar of astrophysics and the time clock, that was put in place 42 years before Yeshua was born. And then after we were able to, with the help of NASA and the the lunations calculations, we're able to synchronize that with the biblical calendar of the first century. And so we know exactly the day and within a couple of hours of when he healed the man who was born blind. I can tell you exactly the day on the Julian calendar he healed the man that was lame for 38 years. I know exactly when he sent out the 70 at the end of the Feast of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. But again, most people people, they learn the Bible by little numbered sound bites that they hear in church, and they never see anything in context. They never have anything in order. What I've done is I've taken the more than 300 individual incidents in the life and ministry of Yeshua, put them in exactly in chronological order, what each gospel author has to say about that particular incident, so that you have the entire screenplay. Everything that can be known about that incident is right there for you to look at, and that is where you see, some people take similar incidents and make them identical. They take identical incidents and split them up and make them, spread them out into different identities.
Right.
Well, I spent all these years in the Hebrew and the Greek and digging into this stuff and living in the land of Israel for basically the last 20 years in order to be able to do this for people, for those who really want to know the truth.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it's kind of a small group.
Right. Fantastic. We'll be right back after these messages. Much more with Michael Rood when we come back. Get into some questions about, when Yeshua was born and, a whole host of things. Fantastic opportunity to tap the brain of somebody that spent years truth-seeking. We'll be right back after these messages.
Exposing the hate and exploring the love. This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
Welcome back, everybody. Joe Joseph here. And my special guest tonight, Michael Rood of a Rood Awakening International. That's a Rood Awakening, ROOD. You can also check out the Chrono Gospels at thechronologicalgospels.com. If you go there today, you can even download a free Chronological Gospels timeline chart that kind of puts the life and 70-week ministry of Yeshua, of Jesus, right before your eyes in a timeline that you can follow, and you can follow the information, and then they'll email you a free copy of the timeline chart. Fantastic tool in getting into and finding the truth about the greatest activist that this world has ever seen. Really, that's what he was. He just went, Michael, seriously, he was awesome as far as standing up to the Pharisees, which, where the Pharisees were really that power during that time. It was pharisaical in nature. Today it's more secular, but it's that same power that we're fighting against, that this man-made control, all that kind of stuff. Very interesting. He set a good example.
That's right. He deliberately and repeatedly broke the man-made rules and regulations that they had added to the instructions in the Torah. The Torah really means instructions, the 5 books of Moses. And it is that which we received at Mount Sinai that we were clearly instructed. No one is ever allowed to add one single commandment or diminish one single commandment. Because once you do, you have a man-made religious system instead of the commandments of the Almighty.
Right.
And this is what we've all been raised with. It's not just first century Pharisaism. If Yeshua were in America today, he wouldn't be after the Pharisees. He'd be after the entire Christian church, and he'd be laying it waste because of the ridiculous rules and regulations that they've made up, and they've come up with a gospel that has nothing to do with the gospel of the kingdom. Most people don't even stop to think what the gospel of the kingdom that we are supposed to be preaching is. They think it's about the death, burial, and resurrection, and singing "Just As I Am" and have people come forward and receive a gospel of John and a pat on the rear end. Yeshua and his disciples were teaching the gospel of the kingdom 9 months before his crucifixion. Right. His disciples were raising the dead, casting out demons, demonstrating the power of the Almighty as they taught the gospel of the kingdom. The gospel of the kingdom, it is not the death, burial, and resurrection. It's obvious. It's axiomatic. It cannot possibly be. And because even after the resurrection, they still didn't believe in the resurrection.
Right.
But yet they could do miracles 9 months earlier as they taught the gospel of the kingdom. And so it is that gospel that I am attempting to make known. It took me more than 50 years of my life before I could honestly say I was beginning to understand the gospel of the kingdom. And that is because, as you said, I overcame the foundation that I was raised with,
Right.
a Bible believing, going to church 6 meetings a week foundation, memorizing the Bible foundation, but yet it was laced with the interpretations of men that I found as I dug deeper with my skepticism. I found that it's just a bunch of well, as we say in Arabic, hockey foddy. It sounds much more impactful than utter nonsense, but that's what it turns out to be. And, as I said, in second grade, I at that point, I knew that you couldn't get 3 days and 3 nights between Good Friday and Easter Sunday.
You just don't even think about it. You celebrate these things blindly, but you don't even think about that never even crossed my mind, to be honest with you, until I watched that video. And I was like, 1, 2, 3. Hey, wait a minute, Unbelievable.
There it is. That's right. Your wife found the Jonah code first,
Yeah.
and that is the most repeated prophecy that Yeshua utters. He said there's going to be one and only one sign of his authenticity. It was the sign of the prophet Jonah. Just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the great fish's belly, so he would be 3 days and 3 nights in the grave, in the heart of the earth, and raised on the third day. And Einstein couldn't get 3 days and 3 nights between Good Friday, when Dagon, the Assyrian fish goddess, worship. And that's why I grew up eating fish on Friday in public school in Michigan. And you going to parochial school, certainly.
Big fish.
You are eating fish on Dagon, the fish god, Friday. And then he got up on Easter Sunday. Easter, my goodness, you don't even have to go any further than the Encyclopedia Britannica to find out who Easter is, because, this is Nimrod's wife, who, after her death, she, according to Babylonian sun worship, she ascended into the heavens. The gods named her the Queen of Heaven, and then sent her back to the earth in a giant egg. On the first Sunday after the vernal equinox, the egg plummeted into the Euphrates River, and out emerged Semiramis, reincarnated as Easter, the bare-breasted sex goddess who turned a bird into an egg-laying rabbit. Now, you tell me, what does that have to do with the Bible? That's just, it's Babylonian fairy tales that were put in place before the confusion of the languages and now spread all over the face of the earth. She's Aphrodite in one culture, she's Easter in another. It's across the map with this.
It sounds like the 2014 Grammy Awards is what it sounds like.
Exactly. Turning a bird into an egg-laying rabbit. The bare-breasted goddess of fertility. We have that. That's Playboy magazine.
Right.
What's her emblem? It's the bunny rabbit. It's the bare-breasted goddess of fertility. Well, I guess they've taken it even further than that nowadays. Yes. But, the Bible says, the Gospels say that when the women came to the grave early the first day of the week, it was still dark, and the tomb was empty. When did he get up? On the fourth night? No, on the third day. Yeshua died as the Passover lamb. Remember when he came out of the wilderness after his 40 days and his temptation? John said, "Behold, the Lamb of God, which takes away the sin of the world." He was the epitome of the Passover lamb. And that is why when we do Passover, we then bring to light all of these prophetic shadow pictures embedded in these feasts and in these rehearsals and in the temple service, so that people can see what went on in the first century. And I will tell you, it will tear your heart out of you. It is just such a glorious thing. And I'll tell you, there's nobody that does it better than the Rood crew. We put everything into this. The people that come to this thing never go anyplace else. This is the one place they have to be on the planet for Passover.
Man, I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely. So 3 days, 3 nights. Obviously, boy, once you count that, yeah. How about Christmas? I mean, we just now this this just happened. My wife was Mrs. Claus. I mean, literally Mrs. Claus.
That makes you Mr. Claus.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but it was crazy. I wasn't as big on Christmas as she was. I mean, that was her holiday. So you have to understand how hard it was for her to give that up, because not only that, she had very vivid family memories. It's a very traditional time of year. So it's very hard for anybody to give that up. As a matter of fact, it's what you make of it always came up from time to time, but we always knew in the back of our head, in the back of our minds, that there was something not right about it, that it wasn't right to celebrate it. And I found the passage, I think it's Jeremiah 9, when it talks about the Christmas tree, and that also was pretty revealing. But then again, I got to watch one of your videos, and it really broke it down, especially the Santa suit. I thought that was very fitting, since you had the beard already, so that was good.
Yeah,
that was good.
Nothing like hearing me do the whole Christmas story, dressed up like Santa Claus in front of a Christmas tree.
Yes.
And but people hear things here and there, but this is something that in seminary we actually learn the background of Christmas. The celebration of the Saturnalia. So we're also told how to keep it calm down, not to offend anyone, because the whole thing that we're taught in seminary is how to keep our denomination going. It is survived for hundreds of years without us, and it doesn't need people asking questions. It just needs people complying. And so, just sit down, shut up, don't ask questions, and put your 10% in the offering plate. Volunteer and don't ask questions and don't cause trouble. And this is what it's based on. And so as long as everyone goes along with that and doesn't ask any hard questions, they're comfortable. Otherwise, they get the left foot of fellowship and they're gone. Even pastors. I talk to pastors on a monthly basis, several of them every month, who have been booted out because they started to ask questions, and those questions are not welcome in the world of religion. It's not based on truth. It's based on fleecing people and keeping them dumb. I call them, this is the mushroom syndrome. What do they feed mushrooms? They keep them in the dark, and they feed them horse manure. And that's how you grow mushrooms, and that's how you grow your big mega churches. I can't believe it. I do watch some of these things sometimes, especially when I'm traveling, and it is very revealing. I turn on Christian television just in case my blood pressure got too low for some reason. And I yell, I scream at these morons. I cannot believe the biblical illiteracy that is predominant in this nation today. These men that are on television, they shouldn't even have been allowed to graduate from Bible school, let alone seminary. I cannot believe it. The biggest bunch of idiots that has walked the face of the earth are the people on Christian television and in the pulpits today. They're absolute morons. And I'm using those terms biblically, of course, because
right, of course.
Idiot and moron are both biblical terms. Many of your listeners may not be aware of the 5 wise virgins and in Greek the 5 moron virgins, and they just didn't get prepared. And then we also have the idios epileusis. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of the scriptures of any private interpretation. The word private interpretation is idios epileusos. Idios is one's own. Epileusos is letting loose. And when you just let loose your brain cells and you do not read the Bible in context and you interpret it according to your own stupidity, you are an idios or an idiot.
Or just blindly follow these fake shepherds, if you will. And how do you go to seminary and then do what you do, knowing that, the whole millstone thing and everything? I would think that would be a deterrent.
They don't believe it. That's it. They just don't believe the Bible. They don't read it in context. Because if they did, they would understand that Yeshua said most. In Greek, it says most of those who call him Lord. Most of those who say that they preach the name of Jesus to the end of the earth, that they cast out demons and do wonderful works, most of them will be thrown into the lake of fire. I mean, that is it's a very frightening thing because, we all fit into that category. And he's not talking about your casual pew warmer or casual Christian. He's talking about those who are preaching his name, those who are casting out demons, or at least say that they're casting out demons and doing wonderful works. This is not your typical pew warmer that he's talking about, but he said most of them will be told to depart. I never knew you. And he said that the vast majority will never, ever find the gate that leads to life. And those that do, even fewer, will walk that path. Very few people are interested in the truth. They just want a religion that comforts them. And I say to hell with religion. I hate religion.
Me too.
Everybody is religious. The Shah of Iran, Obama, he's religious.
Yeah, sure.
Plenty of religion going on out there. But
well, something. Let me tell you this. Of course, Satan being the great deceiver, he even has the Satanists duped. He has the Satanists duped themselves. Really, when I look at Satanism, it is basically being about the self, the self gratification. That's really
that's right. The number one commandment: do what thou will. It is self worship, just like Satan worshipped himself, exalted himself. And so, this is what we've got. I mean, the iPhone, the iPad. It's all about I.
Exactly. Well, here's my point. I think when you take a look at that and what Satanism truly is about, you come to find out that Satan really controls much of the world and many of the people, and they don't even know it. They just go through life like blind sheep and do what, the false shepherds will tell them. Like you say, they have to tithe their 10%, even though that's really not even the basis of what the tithe is all about. I find it extremely troubling. And then I think about the passage in Revelation, how, when Yeshua returns, there's only going to be 144,000 of his chosen people alive when he returns. And 7.2 billion people on the earth right now. 144,000. Wow. I mean, it's an extremely small amount of people.
Well, I have a bit of a different take on that.
Well, yeah, give me your take. I'm interested to know.
But what I am into is helping people with an option, and that is not religion. The option is truth. And when you know the truth, as Yeshua said, the truth will set you free.
Yes.
But people don't get the context. It's set free from man-made religion. That's what he came to set us free from. He didn't come to set us free from the commandments of the Almighty. That is absolutely insane. And I hear people, as you'd mentioned about, that the Torah was nailed, the law was nailed to the cross. It's absolute asinine. It was the handwriting of commandments, the handwriting of ordinances, which was against us. Handwriting, that's not the Almighty. You continue to read on, and it talks about following the doctrines and commandments of men. See, they just pull one verse out of where the sun doesn't shine, interpret it according to their own stupidity, and say that the Torah was nailed to the cross. I just got through reading, on Shabbat Night Live, which I do encourage everyone to tune into. We are stepping into the book of the Judges right now, which is fantastic. A prophetic shadow picture of this generation and where we are right now. And in order to set the stage for the judges, you have to go back into Deuteronomy and see what the standard is that the people are going to be judged against. And when they don't obey and keep the commandments, then all hell breaks loose on them. They end up thousands and hundreds of thousands of people dying, dropping dead on every hand, going into slavery until they repent and the Almighty sends a deliverer like Shamgar, who takes an ox goad, a staff, and kills 600 people. I mean, that's what we need in the White House today for Shamgar to walk in there. But
Yep.
Shamgar isn't going to show up because the people are not repenting. They're not coming back and keeping the commandments. They have got a God that they've constructed out of their own imagination. It is an imagination-based faith in America today. It's not Bible-based. It's not truth-based. It's not historical-based. It is the pure imagination of sick, twisted individuals who milk people from cradle to grave, and just like our government is doing, pulling the same thing, milking people from cradle to grave, turning us all into slaves. Well, I say get free from this thing. Politically and religiously, this is the time to get set free. You know the truth will set you free, but you got to walk out on it. And that is a follower of the Messiah. Everyone else is just going to go follow everyone else to hell in the world of religion and politics. And there's not much you can do for those who refuse to think for themselves.
Right. Now, absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I want to get your take on this since you brought up your broadcast. And of course, you can go to roodawakening.tv and watch it every Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, correct?
That's right. We are going to be moving to 9 p.m. because just this daylight savings time, it just works better for people. But I believe this week is also 8 o'clock p.m. We go live at that time, and the following week, of course, we're also on Messianic.tv.
Messianic.tv.
That's right. On Roku, we probably have, I think it was last week, like 6,000 people watching live, and then it repeats through the week. But the following week, after we go live, then it is on the air with the Inspiration Network International and the Gospel Channel. We're out of Iceland. We're in Europe. We're in Africa. We're in every Spanish-speaking country in the world. And so we are available. The truth is available out there for people that will actually search it out a little bit.
Yeah, no, and that's really what you got to do. Your heart has to seek it. And I'm telling you, when you seek it, you'll find it. God shows you every time. When you want to seek it, you truly seek it with your heart, He'll show it to you. And it's very powerful, I have to say. But you do that segment From Here to Eternity, and I have to say
it was actually 35 segments. We tackled the entire book of the Revelation.
Yes, it was
35
awesome.
weeks, 1 hour a week, to really dig into the book of the Revelation.
I was loving it. And I have this question for you. What do you think is America's role in Bible prophecy? What do you think that is?
Well, I really explored several possibilities as we went through the book of the Revelation on this. And, one thing that we do recognize that if we talk about the revived Roman Empire, we take a look at what happened to Rome with the destruction of the empire. And America really is made up of all of those people groups who have come over here, established the United Nations, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, the New World Order, and we see that from here, this is where it is leading all the nations into a global government. And of course, there are those nations who would never go along with this. To them, we and the United Nations are the great Satan, and this is going to come to a big showdown. We see that in the book of the Revelation, the many-headed beast. We see all of the different creatures that are spoken of in the book of the Revelation. We go right back to the book of Daniel and see the very same symbolism, but the difference is now every one of those nations is a Muslim nation. They are ruled by fanatical Muslim wackos who worship a non-existent moon god and write their own stuff. Just like the Quran was invented, they reinvent the Quran and their definitions of it every day. It's just it's a coloring book that no one's properly colored in yet. Is basically what the Quran is. Of course, our fearless leader calls it the Holy Quran. Make sure that he, enunciates it so everyone knows that
You're
he
talking
really loves the Quran.
you're talking about Chairman Mao Obama?
Chairman Baba, yeah, the one that just can't wait to bow in front of Muslim kings.
Yes.
Somebody ought to put their boot right up his butt. I wish one of those Marines would have just sent it right home when he bowed in front of that Muslim
to his
king.
credit,
what an ass.
To his credit, he's equal opportunity. He also bowed in front of the Chinese and also the Japanese too.
Oh,
so
that's right. That's right.
So he gets around. He bows to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. You might as well curtsy.
Yeah. Well, same thing.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I won't say what I actually think of this.
Well, of course not. No, then you'll be saying a prayer later. Might be time to mikvah. So seriously though, in as far as America's role in this, where do you see America in biblical prophecy?
Well, what I see America doing in biblical prophecy is forcing Israel to do things which is in a direct violation of the covenant that the Almighty made with Abraham.
Yes.
All the land from the Euphrates to the Nile belongs to the sons of Israel. Whenever the Arab nations around attack Israel against insurmountable odds, they actually win and they take more land. And this is actually, with what Muhammad wrote in his fictitious Quran, it is actually something that says that when you try to take another country 3 times and you fail at it, it is Allah's will that they have it. Leave them alone. It's His will. But of course, that's not going to stop those wackos over there. And we see the United States playing into their hand. We see that Kerry is going around trying to get nations to sanction Israel for what God only knows. But, we see that the United States is going to get whacked and whacked severely if they do not turn around. But I think that the people that we have in the White House are not the ones we voted for. They're the ones that America deserves.
Well, yeah,
and this
exactly
is what we see in the Book of the King.
Yes.
We got the leaders we deserve, not the one we want.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. As a matter of fact, when you take a look at the environment in this country today, and we'll get into this a little more in hour number 2, the environment in the country today is just that. We're getting what we deserve. This is judgment. If you ask me, we are reaping what we've sown.
That's right.
That's really what it comes down to. So in hour number 2, we'll get into this and so much more with Michael Rood. It's such an awesome experience, not just to have him on the broadcast, but also, folks, if you're interested, sign up. Go down to the Passover celebration in Charlotte, North Carolina. Be a great time. Love to meet everybody out there. So join us 18 to 20 April down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Go to roodawakening.tv, Rood spelled R-O-O-D, and check it out. Check out the details. Get to know Michael and all of his work. We'll be right back after these messages, folks. Don't go away.
Exposing the hate and exploring the love. This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph and John King.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Joe Joseph here. This is the Freedom Link on Truth Frequency Radio, truthfrequencyradio.com, this 20th of March, 2014. And I'm so glad to have Michael Rood on from roodawakening.tv. That's ROOD. And Michael, again, the Chrono Gospels, I cannot say enough about it. I watched your videos, then I got the Chrono Gospels, and it just put it all together for me, in just vivid detail. Another thing, and this is here's another thing that I always had a problem with. The 14 generations. Mm-hmm. 14 generations. I could not figure out for the life of me why it said, there'll be 14 generations. I think it was from Abraham to David, then from David to Yeshua, 14 generations.
They're carrying away into Babylon, and then the third one is carrying away into Babylon unto the Messiah.
Yes, yes. So it never added up.
You're right. It never added up. It doesn't add up in any Greek text. Doesn't add up in the Aramaic. But the great breakthrough on this, and this is actually when the chronological Gospels, which turned out to be a 40-year project. No idea that it would take most of my life to do it. But we had to find the manuscripts and go back to manuscripts, much older than what are commonly used now in order to ferret these things out. And it turns out that it was Papias, who was the disciple of John, who wrote the Gospel of John. Papias it was who said that Matthew wrote his gospel in the Hebrew language, and several did their best to translate it. And it was this is repeated by many of the church fathers. In fact, Eusebius in the 4th century said that he saw the Gospel of Matthew in Hebrew. He saw it in Caesarea Philippi, but he couldn't read a word of it. It was in Hebrew. And so, it was thought that the Hebrew text was expunged. And this is why it came up. This very question came up to me 18 years ago in Jerusalem, Joe. I was given a piece of paper when I entered into Jaffa Gate, walking into the old city. It was given to me by one of the anti-missionaries. These are Orthodox Jews who want to shut the mouth of Christians. And they did a very good job because they had right at the top $10,000 reward. As soon as I read it, I thought, well, that's a coincidence. I could really use $10,000. And then I read down a $10,000 reward for any Christian who could answer these 10 questions. And so it was just this last year, I was meeting with a couple of professors from Hebrew University, which one of them I found out while I was talking, he was involved in the writing of this. And of course, this was written and gone over by Jewish lawyers because nobody in Israel wants to give away $10,000.
Oh, right, of course.
But I said it took me a week and a half to solve 9 of them. It took me 17 years to solve the other one. And the question was, prove from the Christian scriptures that Jesus is any relative of King David. Because we know he must be. He has to be the son of David. But prove from the Christian scriptures. And why, after then, 17 years later, having the answer, why can I not prove it? Why can I not get, my $10,000? Because it's not in the Christian scriptures, it's in the Hebrew Matthew that the Jews kept in their covert archives, and Christians ignored it until just a few years ago, and now in just the last, I think it's 9 years now, 14 ancient manuscripts of the Gospel of Matthew have been found. And in those manuscripts are the correct lineage with the correct number of 14 generations, absolutely dead on perfect. And I can't collect the money because it's not in the Christian scriptures. It's in the Jewish Hebrew scriptures of Matthew. And so I actually, in the chronological Gospels, I have the photographs of the 2 oldest ancient Hebrew manuscripts of Matthew.
Yes.
The very section that has the correct lineage of Yeshua that goes right back through his only earthly parent, Miriam, to King David. And now we have the answer. And so when I had the photographs of those 2 ancient manuscripts, I said, that's it. The chronological Gospels is done. And then I spent the next 9 months putting it to bed and publishing it. And that's why, I encourage everyone to get this. Anyone that wants to know the truth, anyone who really wants to know the real Yeshua, not the, sweet little 8-pound, 6-ounce baby Jesus, not the Jesus that pats little kids on the head and said, "Blessed art thou," but the one who overthrows the tables, who's right in the face of the religious leaders and undressing them in front of everyone, saying, "You cross land and sea to make one convert, and then you turn them twofold more into the son of hell than yourselves. You whited sepulchres, on the outside you look so nice, on the inside you're full of rotting, stinking, maggot-infested bones." This is the real Yeshua. He's not the mamby-pamby, sweet Jesus that we hear about in the Christian church. There's no such thing. This is a man that put his finger in the chest of the religious leaders, and they killed him.
Yeah, they had
to. They killed him for it.
They, in all honesty, they had to. I mean, what are we going to?
Yeah, that's right.
What are we going to do with this Yeshua, boys?
Yeah,
the
religious system.
Yeah. I mean, a direct threat. And look at today. Look at what's going on today. Why, the modern day Pharisees, they have their eyes in everything. Why, they're playing God. We know all, we see all, and if you're wrong, if you do wrong, we can take you out. It's funny. Nothing's really changed in the 2,000 plus years since you shoot. Well, about 2,000 years since he went up to be with his father. But I mean, unbelievable how here's this 14 generation thing. And not one time did I ever think that Joseph is his stepdad. So why would they go on Joseph's lineage if he has nothing to do with Yeshua?
Well, we can trace back and we can see, how. Our English version of the Bible, of Matthew, let's stick with Matthew for a minute.
Okay.
We know it came from the Greek, but there are Aramaic words that remain in our English text, like Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Why are those words in the English text? Because they're still in the Greek text. Why are in the Greek text? Because they came right straight from the Aramaic. But though the Aramaic is not even an accurate translation, it is a paraphrase of Psalm 22. Eli, Eli, lama azabtani is what it is in Hebrew. But in Aramaic, it was changed. So we see the progression. And in the lineage of Yeshua, the Aramaic scholars, they picked words that were accurate enough. They were accurate enough to transmit the lineage. But then when it went over into Greek, they then chose the wrong words to translate the Aramaic. And then when it came to the English, the words are dead wrong that they chose. They do not even follow in line with the Aramaic. But if we go back to the Hebrew, that's where we find the answer. So we're going to leave it for all of those who are really interested to go on the website. Yes. Get the chronological Gospels, read it for yourself. If you don't want the answer bad enough to get the book, I think it's like $68 or $70. I mean, it cost me millions in a whole lifetime to produce it. And I say that anyone who doesn't want to spend $70 on it can, go get themselves a magazine off the rack and entertain themselves some more. You've got to pay the price if you want the truth. And now, as a matter of fact, over in Germany, after I had the birth of my grandson, the evening before I headed up to Amsterdam and Rotterdam. I lectured up there and then turned around and came back and spent 4 days at the University of Munster in Munster, Germany. That is the Institute for Greek New Testament Research. And I was trying to find one manuscript, one answer in one manuscript, and I spent 4 days. That's 4 days in a hotel, 4 days a meal, the train ride and all that. I spent thousands of dollars literally searching for one single manuscript. And I'm doing it in a world that I don't speak German.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know you were fluent in German.
No. My daughter is fluent in German, but that's my mother's side of the family 4 generations ago that came from there. My father, the Roods, came from Amsterdam, and the Roods built all the synagogues there in Amsterdam. But, I speak neither Dutch nor German, and so, I have to fight for these things to get them. And I've had questions that it has taken me well over 20 years to get the answer for, and I've searched for it for 20 years before getting it. So the chronological Gospels is the first time in the transmission of the Holy Writ where people can read it in order to where, see, time is the ultimate context, Joe. If you do not have time-ordered sequence, you don't have the context. It's like going to a movie in which there's a constant flashback, going forward, going back. And I've seen movies that even to this day, I have no idea what it's about because I just didn't get the flashbacks and the flash forwards. And so I didn't follow it. They were poorly designed. Well, most people never even bother reading what Yeshua said. They really have no interest in the training program of the disciples, which, they went from being fishermen to casting out demons and raising the dead in 2 months. 2 months.
Yeah.
And we are given the parables, the teachings, exactly what Yeshua did with them for those 2 months, but yet nobody reads it in context. They just read a verse here, a verse there, half a verse there. Somebody spiritualizes it to where it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And then we go home after we sing a song and we go out and eat our ham dinner.
That's right.
It's like, just absolutely clueless. So the chronological Gospels, this is my tool. I read it all the time. I worked for 40 years to have this in order, and when I read it, it is the greatest treasure. And those, especially the pastors, the teachers, those who have given their lives to study and to teach this, when they get it in their hands, they know this is the greatest treasure. But here's the problem, Joe. When I say, the name of this book is The Chronological Gospels.
Yes.
The life and 70-week ministry of the Messiah. Immediately, all the hair stands up on the back of the head of everybody in the English-speaking world because we have all been taught that Jesus' ministry was 3.5 years. But we are never taught. You can question 99.99% of every theological seminary graduate, and they will know his ministry is 3.5 years. That you ask them, where did that come from? Not one of them will be able to tell you that it is the invention of one man in the 4th century who denied more than 300 years of testimony that his ministry was about 1 year. Every church father, every disciple of the apostles, every disciple of the disciple of the disciple of the apostles for 300 years, all clearly stated or never even challenged that his ministry was about 1 year.
Yeah.
But Eusebius, he was the one, Eusebius, the one who couldn't read the Gospel of Matthew in Hebrew, he was the one who said this: Jesus' ministry was 3.5 years, which is 1/2 of a week. Now, I ask you, there'll be a few people out there that know where in the world and when is 3.5 years, 1/2 of a week.
I'm trying to figure that out right now.
It's the 9th chapter of Daniel, the Messianic prophecy in the 9th chapter of Daniel. What Eusebius was doing is attempting to solve that Messianic prophecy. That Messianic prophecy that he attempted to figure out in the 4th century, that Sir Isaac Newton, noted as the most intelligent scientist that ever lived, went to his grave after 6 years of attempting and doing his best. And actually, the book on his interpretation of Daniel's prophecies was actually published 6 years after his death. But he went to his grave and knew that he did not have all the answers to this. But yet Eusebius came up with this, but Eusebius had an angle that none of us have. Eusebius is the one who wrote the oration in exaltation of the Emperor Constantine, who then named himself the Pontifex Maximus, which is the title of the high priest of paganism, Almighty God incarnate, the vicar of Christ.
The Pope.
That's right, Le Papa. And so Eusebius was the there's some good things that we get from Eusebius. The 3.5 year ministry is a fabrication of fairy tale. And after the 4th century, and not until after the 4th century, were the words in John chapter 6, verse 4, actually, there were words that were forged into the text in order to artificially lengthen Yeshua's ministry. And so what I was doing there in Munster, and what I was doing in England at Lambeth Palace at the museum there is securing the rights for these ancient manuscripts that go back to a family of manuscripts before the forgery was added in. Because anyone who reads the Bible much is going to know there is one miracle recorded by all 4 gospel authors: the feeding of the 5,000.
Right, the feeding of the 5,000.
That gives us a singular moment in time in which every gospel record can be synchronized to that very moment in time. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it happens at the end of the summer. And as a matter of fact, later in the same chapter in Matthew and Mark, they go up to the Feast of Tabernacles, which is in the fall. And the Gospel of John, the very next chapter, this is John chapter 6, feeding of the 5,000, very next chapter, he's going up to the Feast of Tabernacles. Very clearly, at the end of the summer, when the disciples come back from their paired assignments in the Galilee, that's when they find out that John the Baptist has been executed, and that's when he feeds the 5,000. Very clearly at the end of the summer, but there were 8 words added into later Greek text. John 6:4, at the time of the feeding 5,000, it says, and Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. Well, the very next chapter, he's going to the Feast of Tabernacles. That is absolutely insane. In fact, he feeds more than 5,000 people with leavened barley loaves, and the Feast of Passover and unleavened bread, there is to be no leaven in the entire land of Israel. Not only does he do that, but all the males 13 years and up are supposed to be up at the temple in Jerusalem, and there's nobody up at the temple in Jerusalem. Thousands and thousands of his disciples are found around the Galilee. He goes the next day, that's on a Thursday. 2 days later, he's in the Capernaum synagogue. On the Sabbath, the place is absolutely jam-packed with people that are not at Jerusalem for the Feast of Passover. 3 days later, a group of Pharisees come from Jerusalem and confront him on why his disciples are not using the 2-handled Negelvesser and washing their hands and saying that prayer before they eat bread. And so then he feeds 4,000 more people with leavened barley loaves. But the Pharisee leaders are not even Jerusalem, nor do they say anything about Passover. Those words were forged into later text in order to artificially lengthen his ministry to try to make it agree with Eusebius, the heretic in the 4th century who invented the 3.5 year ministry. It took me more than 20 years to solve this problem. Because once you get back and you find out that was not in the earliest text, they added it in to artificially lengthen his ministry. That is when you finally solve the problems and you can put it in chronological order. That's why it's the first time, Joe, the first time in history the Gospels have ever been put in chronological order. But we had to get rid of the fairy tale.
Yeah, it's almost like people like Schofield. That's where they got the idea from. Hey, this has been done before. We could do this again. Let's do this. Let's do this pre-tribulation rapture. Let's get that going, huh? Oh boy. I mean, this is good. I mean, I guess through history, it's just been commonplace. I would say it's commonplace for the Bible to be manipulated. All these different versions that you see out there, they all have different slants, different spins on things, and there's different translations.
Thankfully, we can go back to the original manuscripts, and my favorite English Bible will always be the King James version. But I'm under no delusion that Moses spoke in Elizabethan English, and so but the more study aids have been developed in the English language than any other language. We can go right back to, now I've got a computer setting in front of me and I have access to literally I think about 20 Greek manuscripts right here, but I've got one book that sits on my desk. I consult regularly, gives me access to more than 5,000 extant Greek manuscripts of the New Testament to show me when there's any variation and what the variations are on these different manuscripts, where they're found, what condition they're in. And this is like the golden age of Bible research, but just because I can just mouse over a word. I've got a Bible program, a Bible research program. It cost me about $7,000, and I can find just about anything I need by just moving a simple mouse over this thing. But the problem is that even with all these tools, there are very few people who will really challenge the status quo, challenge what they have been taught, and really question things. They're in there to try to prove what they were taught in seminary. They're there to prove a presupposition. And this is the one thing that the Torah speaks dramatically against. The prophets, those, not prophets who foretell the future, that's a misnomer. It's those who say they speak for the true God, but they have presumed things. Means they have previously reached their assumption, and this is what they're speaking. They're not speaking a word by the Spirit. They're not speaking a word according to the Word. And the Word of God is the revealed will of God. It is His nature. He tells us what we can know about Him is there. And people in denominations, in Bible schools and seminaries, they ask questions that there is no answer for. And then they make up stuff, and then they divide into camps. And this nonsense, I'm sick and tired of it, and I don't put up with it for 1 minute. All religionists, they can go their way, but I am going to stand for the truth, and I'm going to give people an option. And that option is read the Bible, the Gospels in context. You will find a different Yeshua than you have ever imagined in your life. Well, you're going to hear him say things that's going to scare the bejesus out of you, because there's no such word I can say that.
There's no J in Hebrew, okay?
That's right. There's no J sound in Hebrew, so there's no such word as Jesus, and certainly no word such as bejesus. Anyway, but I mean, he cuts right through the crap, and that is what I attempt to do in the chronological Gospels. Let you read it in context if you want to know the truth. If you don't, get good news for modern man when everyone celebrates Passover on the first day of April, which happens to be April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah, that's when they say Passover is to be held.
Yeah, no, that's great.
That's precious.
So I'm excited. I'm excited for this the Passover celebration, 18 to 20 April down in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I have a question for you, because this is something that my wife and I are also trying to figure out and research. And I'm going to I need to know this because it's going to help us grow a little bit. But Sabbath, what is the right way to recognize the Sabbath?
Well, I suggest for people to go back and read the book of Exodus. First of all, we are given the detail on the Sabbath. We've been in bondage. First of all, we've been in Egypt. We got involved with the worship of pagan gods, Apis and Hathor, the cow and bull gods of Egypt. We had been there long enough to where we got completely saturated by the culture. And before we came out of Egypt, he restored the calendar to us. He told us that we were going to keep the Passover in the first month of the year, and that is when the month of the Aviv, not a month of Aviv, but in Hebrew, the Aviv. And Aviv is an ancient Hebrew agricultural term that applies only to barley and the ripeness of the barley and when you harvest it, because you don't harvest ripe crops, you harvest barley when it's in the Aviv stage. And so we know that the barley was destroyed in the land of Egypt because the barley was Aviv. So the Almighty said, from now on, you are going to guard the month of the Aviv, and you'll keep Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and this shall be the first month to you. And so the calendar was restored while we were in Egypt, and we were told that we were going to keep that calendar and keep Passover. Once we entered the land, we would do it forever this way. Then, on our way to Mount Sinai, that is when we were given manna on the way to Mount Sinai, and also a double portion on the 6th day, and we're told to rest on the Sabbath day. So the Sabbath was really reinstituted to us on the way to Mount Sinai. When the Almighty shouted down his commandments, he gave more time and energy to the Sabbath than any of the other commandments. And then when Moses went up into the mountain, because we said we didn't want to hear and listen to the Almighty shout down the commandments under this flaming mountain shaking with an earthquake, and we were afraid we're going to die. And so for the next 9 chapters, Moses is up in the mountain getting the rest of the commandments.
Hold that thought, Michael. We got to go to break. We're on a hard break. We'll be right back after these messages, folks. More on the Sabbath.
Broadcasting worldwide in complete defiance of the U.S. Patriot Act and the NDAA.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back, everybody. Joe Joseph here. You're listening to the Freedom Link on Truth Frequency Radio, truthfrequencyradio.com. Also 90.7 FM, Denver, Colorado. And my guest tonight, Michael Rood of aroodawakening.tv, ROOD, and the Chronological Gospels. Awesome. I mean, if you want to talk about having a tool in your arsenal, that is it. And you want it actually makes you come alive as far as, you know, your thirst for that knowledge, because you can't put it down. It's like, wow, this is it. He was a lot cooler than I was taught. You know, it wasn't as dull and humdrum as like you said, pat little Tommy on the head. Everything's okay. You know, love, peace, and harmony. It was so much more than that, you know. Now, getting back to the Sabbath.
We kind of left off there, after the commandments were shouted down from the mountain. Yes. Moses went back up into the mountain. This is for their 40-day stint. He was told by the Almighty he was going to give him the 10 statements written in stone.
By his own hand, right?
Yeah, and he spent 9 chapters. First of all, the detail of the building of the Ark of the Covenant, the tabernacle, table of showbread, altar of incense, all these things that he saw by revelation, and this pattern that he saw in heaven, he was told to do that upon the earth. Just before the Almighty handed him the commandments in stone. Now, I know this goes against everything you learn from Cecil B. DeMille in the movie The 10 Commandments, okay? But just before he hands him the commandments in stone, he goes on for 6 more verses reiterating the importance and the sanctity and the meaning, the relevance of the Sabbath for all time. He hands him the stone. Moses walks down, and we have built a golden calf. The Almighty said, "Stand back, Moses, I'm going to kill them all." Because we had just violated the blood covenant that we entered into just before Moses went up into the mountain.
It wasn't, unbelievable.
Yeah, in the blood covenant, when Moses had the Levites kill all those bulls, and then he spent all day with branches of hyssop sprinkling the blood on all of the people and on the scroll and on the altar, putting us all under the blood covenant, which means whoever breaks this covenant dies. He's as dead as those bulls are. If the Almighty breaks his covenant to Israel, he dies. If we break the covenant, we die. And so, when Moses came back down, the Almighty said, "Stand back, I'm going to kill them all. I'll start over with you, Moses." And Moses said, "Forget it. You're not starting over with me. Figure something else out." So the Almighty had to figure something else out, and that was the whole sacrificial system. See, the blood of bulls, goats, lambs, and rams can't take away sin. They're just a constant reminder at every feast, over and over, year after year, century after century, millennia after millennia, that the death penalty is owed. And the only way the death penalty can be satisfied is by the death of the offending party, unless someone who never breaks the covenant dies in the place of the guilty party, and then he can renew the covenant with the guilty party. So what we are offered at Mount Sinai to be priests and kings to the whole world, Revelation 1, 5, and 6 says, and he, Yeshua, has made us priests and kings because he renewed the covenant with us. See, the words New Testament don't appear anywhere in the New Testament except as a mistranslation. Every time Yeshua is talking about, he's quoting Jeremiah. This is the renewed covenant in my blood. He's referring back to Jeremiah about the covenant being renewed once the death penalty is paid. And so now, we just take a look at that very thing and about the sanctity of the Sabbath. And I tell people, go through and read the context around every time the word Sabbath is used from the beginning, from Genesis to Revelation, and you will understand that this is not to be trifled with. This is something that the Almighty says is a sign of his people. And of course, we hear, I've heard people say, well, we keep Sunday as the Sabbath because that's the day that Jesus was raised from the dead. I said, first of all, you're an idiot. He wasn't raised on the first day of the week. The women came to the grave early in the morning. It was still dark, and he was already up. And that's not why you keep it. It's because the Pope was the one that changed it.
Yes.
And anyone who says anything different is illiterate. They're just plain illiterate. Because there is, just as Cardinal Gibbons wrote, you can read the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation. You'll not read one word sanctifying Sunday as the day of worship. The scriptures maintain a strict observance of the Sabbath, a day we never sanctified. Furthermore, the Catholic Catechism says Sunday is our mark of authority. It is proof that we, the Roman Catholic Church, has supremacy over the canon of Scripture. It is also proof that the Protestants accept our authority because they, too, keep the Sunday day of worship. And it's not because of some crazy idea that he was raised on Easter Sunday. That's pagan sun god worship, okay? Right. It's not anything to do with it. It's because Constantine said everyone will rest on the venerable day of the sun, because he is a worshiper of Sol Invictus Mithra, the Roman sun god who was born on December 25th, which just happens to be the winter solstice at the time of the winter solstice, according to the ancient Babylonian calendar before the precession of the equinoxes. It all goes back to Babylon and the confusion of the languages and whether people are going to keep the commandments of the Almighty or they're just going to follow religious tradition, which is all Babylonian sun god worship.
Man, you always put it so so plainly. I mean, it's awesome. I love that's just it. It's if you know history, you can understand what's going to happen. And really, the Bible is one of the best historical texts out there. In all of your research, Michael, have you ever got into the Gospels that were left out of the original canon?
There are a lot of extra biblical text, and I've read a lot of them through the years. And all you have to do is read some of these, and you immediately recognize why they were not put in the canon of Scripture, because some of them are just pure, just absolutely made up, may I say, hockey foddy.
Right.
You read them and this is utter nonsense. This does not flow with anything, doesn't make any sense at all. The book of Barnabas, it's decent. There's one thing. I read the whole book of Barnabas and got one thing out of it. Near the end, during the trial of Yeshua, one of the comments was he does his cures on the Sabbath. Well, that sparked an interest in me. So I went back and read, starting with Matthew 1:1, going all the way through the end of the book of John in one sitting. And that's usually how I read the Gospels, to make sure I've got all of the data in my mind for processing. And there was only, there was only one time I could prove that it wasn't on the Sabbath that he actually did the healing. And that was like a bright spot there. I saw that, he is consistently healing on the Sabbath. The day that the Almighty set aside for him to meet with us and us to meet with him. It is a holy day and a day for healing. And it's just such a beautiful thing. So, I did get that out of the book of Barnabas, but the rest of it, there just wasn't much there. And then some of it you read, like the Gospel of Judas and things like that. It's just pure nonsense. This is the Gnostics, the people that, dream up, new and different religious concepts. You can usually see through those fools very, very quickly. Now, I was commenting this today with my CFO. He has his degree in theology, and our chief financial officer is a brilliant man. And we discuss theology, quite a bit. And I was telling him how, in my Bible program, immediately comes up the Matthew Henry commentary. And I told him when I was 17, 18, 19, I really dug into Matthew Henry. I really studied it hard. I said, now I look at it and I think this guy is an idiot. When I was a young kid, it had something of value. But Matthew Henry is so far, this is like so elementary. This guy is so clueless on so many things. It's like, my youngest daughter knows more about the Bible than this guy. He's flowery, but really putting it in context and history. But see, this is after, this is 60 years later, that I'm able to say this. But yet, when I was 17, it was a real treasure to me. Well, everyone, we grow up in life, and so when I can look at Matthew Henry and I can tear him apart in a half a second. When I read these extra biblical texts, it takes less time than that. I'll give you an example. Here is one. Let's see, what is this in the Proto-Evangelion of James? No, first and second infancy. Here it is. I'll give you. Here is a detail. The wise men, on the night of the birth of Jesus, come to the high priest of the synagogue at Bethlehem and ask, where is he who is born King of the Jews? As soon as you read that, you know that the person that wrote this was an idiot. There is no high priest in a synagogue. The wise men, the Chaldean astronomers, came to the house where the young child was, and it was over a year later.
Right.
And yet, this person, wrote this, but they don't know enough to not get caught immediately within the first couple of pages. This person is a Gentile. He has absolutely no idea what's going on. And the only way he's going to be trusted is if other ignorant people, illiterate people, which, back then they're not even allowed to have a copy of the Bible at all. It's in the hands only of the religious leaders. Right. So you have to take their word. And so, just absolute gross ignorance pervades until, we're in the dark ages. Because there is no truth. The religious political system has all of the truth locked away from the common man. He can't even get to it. So that's what politics and religion does when it gets together.
Sure.
It turns people into slaves.
And really, that's what we have now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we have now. It is. It's a second dark age. It really is. I've always said that. Always said that. And it's a sad truth. It's one of the things that I always say is that, what people say is you should never talk about two things, politics and religion. Well, those are the two things that we should be talking most about, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's right. If we don't talk about that, just plug in your iPod and blow your brains out with AC/DC or something.
Right. Well, to each their own. That's all I could. That's all I could say. God did give us all free will. And that's the one thing I just that you can't overcome.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, now, as it is often said, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, which simply means that ignorance and stupidity is not grounds for capital punishment at this point.
Very true, very very true indeed. I so how about Enoch? Now the book of Enoch talks about fallen angels, about the corruption of the gene pool, if you will, by them mating with the human women. What's your take on the book of Enoch?
Well, first of all, the book of Enoch wasn't written by Enoch. It's what's called a pseudepigrapha, the pseudo epigraph. So it's a false epigraph. It's,
Okay.
In order to give it extra credence, they call it the book of Enoch because then it has a standing, at least in people's minds, of something that is far beyond what it really is. This is, very common out there, such as the Jerusalem Talmud. It wasn't written in Jerusalem. It was written in outside. It was in the area became known as Palestine, but they literally called it the Jerusalem Talmud because calling it Jerusalem Talmud, just adds
it's got a flair
it
to
adds
it.
an edge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, this is very common out there. So the book of Enoch is very obviously, it's rabbinic commentary. It's the commentary on the scriptures. There's some good commentary in it, and there's some things in it that I would severely question.
Yeah,
and
really.
We don't even know that the book of Enoch that of which Jude alludes to is anything like what we have today, just because it has not been preserved and there is no lineage of it that we can actually put our fingers on. Whereas the rest of the New Testament, we and the rest of the Torah and the prophets, it has a long history that we can go back and look at manuscripts because, of course, we have no original manuscripts. We have copies of copies of copies of copies of copies, and every time it is copied, that you have the opportunity for error.
Right.
You also, in the Greek manuscripts in the New Testament, we have about 5,000 extant Greek manuscripts and over 250,000 variations within those 5,000 manuscripts.
Wow.
And immediately people think that, well, is there, how do you know what to trust? Well, the fact of the matter is the New Testament is written in Koine or defiled street Greek. It's not written in classical Greek. It's not Plato, okay? And those trained in classical Greek, it drives them nuts trying to read the New Testament because it's street Greek. And just as in America, we use different words to describe the same thing in different parts of the country. I do this exercise when I get a group of people together to illustrate this, and I say, okay, all together, I want you to say it at the same time. What do you call this long sandwich that it has lettuce and tomato and cold cuts and tomato and all? What do you call it? And everyone shouts out together about 15 different things,
right,
from Heroes to Grinders to Subways to, it's all across the board, and we're all speaking English. So when it comes to making copies of the New Testament, they would use a word in their part of the Greek Empire. Remember, this goes from Macedonia to the Indus River in Ethiopia, all the way down, Indus River in India, all the way to Ethiopia. This is the 127 kingdoms of Ahasuerus that we read about in the book of Esther. This is a huge empire where everyone has their national language and then they speak Greek on top of that. So right. The Greek language takes on subtleties and variations within all these things, and that's what makes it so real, because it was really meant to communicate to the people where they are. And so, so I look at all these different manuscripts. I look at all the different words and usages of words, because that helps to give a more full understanding. Because one thing we have to understand, Joe, and everyone needs to understand out there, even though we have the New Testament delivered to us basically in Greek, except for Matthew, of course, we got that in Hebrew. But it's not describing a Greek culture. These are Greek words that are describing a Hebrew culture. People that are observant to the Torah, whose entire civilization has been overturned and turned upside down religiously by a religious group called Pharisees who are in violation of the Torah, who have added to and subtracted from the scriptures, and the prophet that Moses prophesied comes on the scene and kicks their ass.
That's really what happened.
That is the Gospels in a nutshell. And if someone's offended by the word ass, well, then you offend me by being offended.
Exactly.
Because that's what he did. Yeshua said, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace. I did not. I came to bring a sword. I came to separate husbands from wives, sons from fathers, daughters from mothers. That's why I came, to set the truth down, to put a plumb line down, to put the razor edge down. And so you either get on the truth or just go off into oblivion. You got your choice now, because I am the prophet." Deuteronomy 18, of whom Moses prophesied, "I do not speak my own words. I speak the words I hear from heaven, and I will be your judge on the day of judgment."
And, the parallels are striking. The parallels are striking between, the spiritual side of things, knowing the truth about Yeshua, about his ministry, about Yahweh, about the Torah, all this stuff. Learning the actual truth about it all is very similar in nature to the path that you lead when you're learning the truth about other things, about how how corrupt the world is. Like, for example, how our food is corrupted, how our water's corrupted, how they spray things in the sky and all this kind of stuff. Everything is corrupted. And you have to accept the fact that, yes, there are people out there that would do that to you. Well, the same thing is, you have to accept that truth, and it sucks, but it's also amazingly fulfilling to accept the truth about Yeshua and the real ministry that he had on earth, because it's a totally different story than what mainstream religion will tell you.
Joe, what I recommend to people, first of all, when they get the chronological gospel, is I tell them, read the introduction.
Yes, you have to read it. Yes.
You have to do it, because I've had pastors tell me they learn more about the Bible than they knew in their entire life after reading the introduction.
Yeah, you're
and then
right.
That sets everything in order. And then the index is 24 pages of exactly what happened on what dates, and you can read right down through it, and it's like reading an overview of the screenplay of his entire ministry. And when you read it, you'll discover things that, it's going to shock you and say, could that be true? And then you go back and read it, and yes, surely it is true. But again, it's because nobody really is teaching us how to read the Bible in context. The religious system is built on reading numbered sound bites completely out of context and manipulating them to where we have no idea what we're reading. And so the index in itself, this is, it took years and years to be able to articulate it in this clear, straightforward manner. And then, of course, what we've done for nearly a year now, we have a men's fellowship that meets every other Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Nothing else is going on in the world on Sundays at 10 o'clock. So we figure, okay, we've had a good Sabbath day's rest. We'll get together for first day of the week, 10 o'clock, and we go for an hour to 2 hours. And we are only, let's see, I have to see where we are. Yeah, we are on page 97 out of the 390 pages. That's a year it's taken us to get to 97 pages.
Did you read the introduction?
Yes, we did.
Okay, I was going to say.
We read the introduction. Mm-hmm. We discussed it. We got into greater detail because, I'll have sometimes one verse and the footnote on it will be an entire page. But when I get to really discuss what I know about it, I can go on for an hour. That'd be like 40 pages of text, what I really know about this stuff. And so this is what we get to do here at the Rood Awakening headquarters. And we really do invite everyone to join us for Shabbat Night Live. If you really appreciate and want to get into the depth of the scripture, the first hour is kind of a variety program. We do questions and answers. We get into some hard things, and usually have a great musician that's with us. And then 1 hour of nonstop into the depth of the scriptures like you have never ever seen it before. It's and all these Christian networks, I say, it's amazing they let me on because of what I'm saying, but they love it. These networks, when David Cirillo, who runs the Inspiration Network, he saw my program and he said, get that program on. I want the entire Shabbat Night Live on. And he and his entire family have all checked out at Easter and Christmas, and he's out there actively in churches preaching against this paganism. Yeah. And his children, we're the same age. Our children are the same age. And all of his children have gone on Facebook. They are all out of the system, and they are preaching righteousness. And I am stunned, absolutely stunned that this is happening.
It is. You know what I have to say with my wife and I giving this up is we feel like a weight has lifted, literally a weight. You don't realize how much those holidays weigh you down. You really don't. You don't really understand the toll it takes on you. It actually does. And just how enjoyable it's going to be able to celebrate these feast days the way that they're supposed to be celebrated. And I tell you, my wife and I owe it all to you for opening our eyes to this. And now we're on a journey that we feel comfortable with, finally, for the first time, So it's awesome, and I really do appreciate you coming on the broadcast, Michael. We're out of time, so can you plug your website one more time for everybody to
www.aroodawakening.tv. That is Rood, as in ROOD, Michael Rood. You can also find me michaelrood.tv. You can search anything on the web, and also YouTube. We've got hundreds of videos that are available for your for your life out there. And just as Joe and his wife found, the Jonah Code, that 10-hour video in which I'm going to teach you how to count to 3.
And you didn't do that all in one day, did you?
No, it took me 2 nights.
Oh, wow. That was two nights?
2 nights in front of a live audience. And so, I did it all over America, 2 nights, because it takes that long to teach people enough background to where they can count 3 days and 3 nights.
I know. They can count to 3. Well, hey, I look forward to seeing you in just a little less than a month.
A little less than a month, brother, and put the word out there. It's going to fill up, so anyone that wants to come, make their decision, come now.
That's 18 to 20 April in Charlotte, North Carolina, for the Passover celebration. Hope everybody goes. I'll tell you what, we'll be there. Great to have you on again, Michael. Thank you for coming on and helping answer some of my questions, and I hope we answered questions for a lot of you out there as well. Have a great night, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with Aaron Dykes and Melissa Melton at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow evening. Have a great night, everybody.